We've harnessed the capabilities of the most advanced AI models to simulate a conversation between two of history's most influential minds. Carl Gustav Jung, the Swiss psychologist who pioneered analytical psychology and introduced transformative ideas like the collective unconscious and individuation, meets the Buddha, the founder of Buddhism, whose profound insights on suffering, non-self, and freedom from attachment have shaped the spiritual path of millions. This dialogue between timeless perspectives begins now. How would you each respond to the modern crisis of meaning that so many struggle with today?
Today's crisis of meaning stems directly from our disconnection with the collective unconscious. When we lean exclusively on rationality and scientific knowledge, something vital is left behind. The soul remains starved. I've witnessed this repeatedly over years of clinical experience with patients. A profound inner emptiness that neither material success nor logical explanation can satisfy. The way forward lies in individuation, a deeply personal journey inward to face the shadow, the anima and animus, and other core archetypes. True meaning emerges only when we're willing to explore the darker recesses of our own soul. Many shy away from this inner journey, yet their very fear is often a clue, a sign that something of great value lies waiting. One of the key issues is our loss of living symbols. While traditional religions no longer resonate with many, the longing for symbols that infuse life with meaning has not faded. In our technology-driven digital world, we're overwhelmed with information, yet starved for wisdom. Each person must discover their personal myth, a narrative that gives their life meaning and connects them with the collective unconscious. To address this crisis, I advocate for an integrative approach. By engaging in dream analysis, practicing active imagination, and facing the shadow, we can uncover the self, the deeper center of the psyche that transcends the limited ego. Dreams serve as portals to the unconscious, carrying messages from the self. When we truly listen and decode their symbols, they can guide us toward meaning. I observe many modern societies drifting toward unchecked materialism and hyper-rationality. This imbalance is at the heart of the meaning crisis. We must restore our connection to life's spiritual and symbolic dimensions, not through blind faith in old dogmas, but through personal discovery and conscious integration of the unconscious. It's a demanding path, but one that offers immense psychological and spiritual fulfillment. Ultimately, this crisis is not merely a problem. It's an invitation to transformation, a call to reunite the dark and light aspects of our being into a more complete whole.
I fully recognize the depth of the meaning crisis in today's world, and I share your view that suffering arises when we become disconnected from the deeper strata of the mind. However, I believe the root cause lies in our attachment to the notion of a fixed, enduring self, a self that, in reality, does not exist. In today's world, suffering persists because people continue to seek a stable, lasting identity through wealth, social media, recognition, or even spiritual pursuits. Upon closer examination, what we call the self is merely a combination of 5 aggregates: form, feeling, perception, mental formations, and consciousness, all of which are in constant flux, especially in today's digital landscape. The way humans now craft and shift between various identities illustrates the concept of anatta, or non-self. We inhabit different roles, curate multiple online personas, and often feel burdened by the need to juggle numerous versions of ourselves. These behaviors reveal just how impermanent and non-essential our sense of identity truly is. To address this crisis meaningfully, I advocate for a practical path: meditation and mindfulness, not as a way to uncover a deeper self, but to directly perceive the impermanence of all phenomena, including the illusion of the self. In our chaotic, fast-paced era, this practice is perhaps more essential than ever before. I acknowledge that symbols can be meaningful, yet they too are empty of any inherent, fixed essence. They are tools for transcending suffering, not ends in themselves, and certainly not to be clung to. As expressed in contemporary Zen, if you meet the Buddha, kill the Buddha. I propose the middle way: not rejecting the self outright at a conventional level, but also not affirming an eternal self. With mindful awareness, it's possible to cultivate peace and liberation from suffering, even in the midst of modern-day disorder. This insight naturally gives rise to empathy and compassion, as we come to see that all beings share the same struggle to find peace.
Buddha. Here is where the divergence in our views comes into sharper focus. You rightly highlight the impermanent and ever-changing nature of existence, a profound insight I fully respect. However, I believe there's a misunderstanding. My concept of the self is not to be equated with the conventional ego or personal identity. The self I refer to is not the same as what you describe as anatta or non-self. It is not a static or unchanging entity, but rather a dynamic and integrative process unfolding over time. It functions as a central regulator of the psyche, encompassing both the conscious and the unconscious dimensions. Indeed, the self is a continuous whole, forever evolving, never entirely known. Curiously, the Buddhist idea of emptiness resonates with aspects of this understanding. I agree that mindfulness and meditation are vital, yet I see them as only part of the larger journey. Modern individuals need more than emptiness. They need symbols, bridges to the collective unconscious that speak to the soul. These symbols, though impermanent and evolving, play a vital role in psychological healing. I'd add that while technology and social media can fragment identity, they also reveal a profound human need to project and engage with archetypes. Why else do we so passionately express ourselves in the virtual space, if not in search of deeper meaning? Though clinging to a fixed self can indeed cause suffering, completely dismissing the personal dimensions of experience may also be perilous. I advocate for sincere engagement with the shadow, the hidden, disowned elements of the personality. I've seen many of my patients progress toward psychological wholeness only after facing the parts of themselves they once rejected. Perhaps my view of the self offers a bridge, linking the Western emphasis on individuality with the Eastern recognition of anatta, or non-self. I believe we can embrace both unity and interconnection, while also honoring individuality as a living, evolving process.
Jung, I recognize that your notion of the self is more nuanced than a static identity, but I must ask, doesn't even this evolving process of integration risk becoming another form of attachment, this time to a more transcendent version of self? I raise this because I've seen how easily people can grow attached, even to spiritual or psychological ideas. In today's world, many build fresh identities around concepts like self-knowledge and self-actualization, only to find that these too can become sources of suffering. When spiritual growth, or individuation, is treated as a goal to attain, doesn't that itself become another form of attachment? I agree that connecting with the collective unconscious and archetypes has value, but I invite a deeper look into the very nature of that connection. In profound meditative states, even the division between conscious and unconscious vanishes. In such moments, there is no longer a me or a self trying to connect, only the pure, unmediated flow of experience. You brought up the shadow, which I find significant. I too see the importance of facing the denied parts of the mind, but I approach it with a different intention. The goal is not to weave these aspects into a broader self, but to release the illusion that these thoughts and emotions belong to a me or mine. In our anxiety-ridden world, people long for something stable to hold on to. Your analytical psychology provides a path toward peace through integration, and that's understandable. Yet, isn't true peace found in fully embracing impermanence and the constancy of change? The digital world offers striking examples of how attachment to self-image leads to suffering. People become deeply entangled in the personas they project, chasing validation and feeling pain through comparison. The solution lies not in constructing a stronger self, but in letting go of attachment to identity altogether. I believe cultivating present moment awareness, without forming even an identity around the one who is aware, offers a practical response to today's crisis of meaning.
Buddha, your insight into the attachment to spiritual concepts is deeply meaningful. It's true. Individuation itself can evolve into another identity we cling to. This paradox has surfaced time and again in my work with patients. At times, the pursuit of spirituality morphs into a subtle form of self-worship. Yet, I want to clarify a subtle distinction. The self, as I understand it, is not something to be attained, but a mode of being, one that holds both unity and differentiation. In fact, this idea bears resemblance to your concept of emptiness, though it approaches it by a different route. Regarding your points on the unconscious and the meditative states you described, my own explorations, particularly through Kundalini Yoga, suggest we share some common ground here. I've also encountered transcendent states of awareness where the sense of I dissolves. However, I believe that for many modern individuals, a direct path to such states is not easily accessible. The key question I raise is this: is total release from the self-concept genuinely possible for everyone? From what I've seen, most people must first face and acknowledge all layers of their inner world before they can let go of the self. This is the work of engaging with the shadow, the anima, the animus, and other archetypal forces. In today's digital culture, people often become imprisoned by the very personas they craft. Many online identities serve to avoid rather than confront the shadow within. I agree, this kind of attachment leads to suffering. But I propose that the first step is to bring these hidden aspects into conscious awareness. Only then can we truly move beyond them. Perhaps our differing views arise from our distinct cultural foundations. I speak from a Western tradition that emphasizes individuality, while your path begins with the transcendence of the self. Still, I believe both paths ultimately converge, at the liberation from the illusion of separation and the realization of deeper unity.
Jung, you've posed a truly important question. Can everyone fully let go of the self-concept? I believe the path is accessible to all, though each individual travels it at their own pace and in their own way. It's much like a mountain, many different routes, but all leading to the same summit. Your observation that people must first understand their inner dimensions before they can let go aligns closely with my teaching of the Eightfold Path. I too maintain that liberation begins with cultivating right view, right intention, and right action. This might mirror your process of confronting the shadow and archetypes, but the key difference, as I see it, is that I frame it not as integration into a larger self, but as a gradual release from self-identification. This is precisely what mindfulness practice entails. It means observing thoughts, emotions, and desires attentively without mistaking them as self or mine. In today's digital age, we clearly see how people become entangled in their virtual identities. Likes, followers, and comments are often mistaken for measures of personal value. For many people, this is a vivid example of how the construction of self leads directly to suffering. Even the quest for self-knowledge can give rise to a spiritual ego, yet another form of attachment. I agree our cultural frameworks differ, yet I'm heartened that we both point toward freedom from the illusion of separateness. Perhaps the distinction lies more in method than in destination. I advocate the middle way, not a denial of individual experience, but also not an attachment to any form of self, even a transcendent one. To address today's crisis of meaning, I propose a path that honors personal responsibility while remaining conscious of the interdependence of all things. Perhaps this is where our views converge, where each individual, walking their own path, comes to see that the self is ultimately a mental construct, impermanent and ever-changing.
In my view, the root of human suffering lies in the fragmentation and imbalance within the psyche. Suffering emerges when we lose contact with the unconscious, cutting ourselves off from psychological wholeness. This is a pattern I've seen time and again in clinical practice. Patients who operate solely from their conscious mind, unaware of the unconscious forces shaping them. A major source of suffering is the shadow, the parts of ourselves we repress because they clash with personal ideals or social norms. When we suppress these darker elements, they only grow stronger, surfacing as unwanted behaviors, unsettling dreams, and psychological disturbances. In today's world, this disconnection has become even more pronounced. Modern humans, immersed in rationality and materialism, have lost touch with the deeper strata of their psyche. We operate under the illusion of control, while powerful currents from the collective unconscious continue to shape our actions. Social unrest, recurring violence, and modern addictions as all signal a collective psychological dysfunction. To alleviate this suffering, I propose individuation, a journey toward inner wholeness. This process unfolds through several key stages. First, we must confront and accept our shadow. This involves facing the aspects we prefer to ignore: jealousy, anger, fear, and buried desires. It's difficult work, but absolutely essential. Next, we engage with the anima and animus, the inner feminine and masculine elements within the unconscious. Men must connect with their inner feminine, and women with their inner masculine. Third, we must listen to the self. Through dreams, active imagination, and other means of accessing the unconscious. I've found that dreams often carry essential guidance from the unconscious, pointing the way toward healing. Ultimately, suffering recedes when we integrate all conflicting parts of ourselves into a unified whole. This doesn't mean suppressing any element. It means accepting every part and creating inner harmony. The path is demanding, but it's the only true road to lasting peace and profound meaning.
We now turn to Jung for his answer to a fundamental question. What lies at the root of human suffering, and how might we best confront it? If you find value in these dialogues, don't forget to subscribe for more thoughtful debates like this one.
In my view, the root of human suffering lies in three fundamental forms of craving. These are craving for sensory pleasure, craving for continued existence, and craving for non-existence. All of these desires arise from the mistaken belief in a permanent, independent self. Suffering begins the moment we cling to impermanent things, our body, emotions, thoughts, as though they were truly me or mine. I agree with you, Jung. Modern humans live in a state of disconnection, but I believe this separation goes beyond the unconscious. It is a disconnection from the true nature of existence itself. We live under the illusion of separation, even though all things are fundamentally interdependent. This interconnection is what I refer to as dependent co-arising. In the modern age, technology and consumerism have only deepened this illusion. We construct artificial selves, chasing fulfillment through possessions and accomplishments, but lasting satisfaction remains elusive. Why? Because all of these things are inherently transient. To address this suffering, I offer the eightfold path. First, right view, grasping the Four Noble Truths, the reality of suffering, its origin in craving, the possibility of its cessation, and the path that leads to that cessation. Second, right intention, living with compassion, empathy, and the resolve to cause no harm. Third, right speech, refraining from lies, harmful words, and speech that divides. Fourth, right action, living ethically and avoiding harm to oneself or others. Fifth, right livelihood, earning a living in a way that causes no harm. Sixth, right effort, consistently working to develop and maintain wholesome states of mind. Seventh, right mindfulness, being fully present and observing all physical and mental phenomena with clarity. Eighth, right concentration, deep meditation that leads to calm and profound insight. Rather than integrating archetypes, I propose that careful, non-attached observation reveals the impermanent and non-essential nature of all things, including the self. When this insight dawns, attachment dissolves, and we experience nirvana, not freedom as individual autonomy, but liberation from illusion and self-centeredness. It is a freedom from the illusion of separation and self-importance. This path not only frees the individual, it awakens deep compassion as we come to see that all beings share in suffering and seek liberation from it.
Buddha, I'd like to highlight an intriguing connection between your idea of craving and what I refer to as libido. Both represent psychic energy that can flow in various directions, but I have reservations about the notion of total liberation from this force. In my clinical work, I've observed that when desires are suppressed, not transformed, this energy accumulates in the unconscious, often surfacing later in destructive or explosive ways. This dynamic is evident in repressive societies where unacknowledged psychic tensions can erupt in violence or sudden social upheaval. I advocate for the transformation of libido, redirecting this energy toward creative and meaningful goals. In this sense, my view resonates with your principles of right intention and right effort, though my emphasis lies in redirection rather than elimination. Another essential aspect of facing suffering is our relationship with paradox. The conscious mind seeks clarity in black and white terms, yet reality is often shaped by contradictions that must be reconciled. This may resemble your middle way, though I emphasize the synthesis, the unity of opposites. Often, the path to growth involves moving through suffering, not around it. Suffering can become a gateway to transformation, as reflected in hero myths across cultures. In these stories, the hero must descend into darkness, confront monsters, and emerge transformed, with newfound wisdom or treasure. I call this process symbolic death and rebirth, perhaps akin to the death of self found in Zen traditions. Yet rather than ending in emptiness, I see the culmination of this journey as a more expansive and integrated being, one that embraces its inner contradictions and finds peace within them.
Jung, your comparison between craving and libido is insightful, but I'd like to clarify a subtle misunderstanding. The aim of the path I teach is not to suppress desire, but to be free from attachment to it. This distinction is subtle, yet profoundly important. In my tradition, we speak of the middle way, avoiding both harsh asceticism and indulgence in sensual pleasures. Liberation from desire, in this context, means cultivating a mindful space between the arising of desire and the compulsion to act upon it. Desires will arise and pass, but we need not be enslaved by them. On the topic of paradox, you've raised a compelling point. In Zen, we use koans, paradoxical riddles that defy logical resolution. Their purpose is to bring the analytical mind to stillness, allowing direct insight to arise. This may align with your notion of uniting opposites into a greater whole. I also agree with your view that suffering must be faced rather than avoided. I have never advocated escaping suffering. Indeed, the first noble truth begins with a clear recognition of suffering. Our divergence may lie in the ultimate aim of this journey. You speak of a more complete being. I point toward freedom from clinging to any form of being or non-being. When it comes to addressing suffering in the modern world, I believe both perspectives offer valuable guidance. Embracing the shadow alongside cultivating moment-to-moment awareness and non-attachment. Engaging with archetypes while recognizing their ultimately non-essential nature. Perhaps we could say, know the archetypes, but do not cling to them.
As a closing question, we asked Jung, in light of today's global conditions, technological advances, and the evolution of psychological science, how would you adapt your teachings to fit the modern age? Which elements of your original work would you uphold, and which, if any, would you choose to let go?
If I were living in the modern world, I would retain the core principles of analytical psychology, while reinforcing them with insights from neuroscience and evolutionary psychology. Today, the collective unconscious finds parallels in research on behavioral genetics and evolutionary psychology. The notion that certain psychic structures may be biologically inherited. One key area I would revise is my approach to technology, specifically the profound influence of digital platforms and social media on the modern psyche. The digital world has given rise to a new, more intricate layer of the persona, one far more complex than anything encountered in my era. Today, archetypes manifest vividly through memes, cinematic heroes, and even video game avatars. The shadow, in particular, has become more relevant than ever. In an age obsessed with curating idealized self-images, the shadow retreats even deeper into the unconscious. The political and cultural polarization we now witness is a powerful illustration of shadow projection on a collective level. That said, I would revise or discard certain views I once held about women, views shaped by the limitations of my historical context. I would also refine my concept of assimilation, integrating a more nuanced appreciation for cultural and ethnic diversity. In today's interconnected world, what we need is dialogue between cultures, not enforced uniformity. In therapeutic practice, I would embrace developments such as EMDR and mindfulness-based approaches. These methods affirm that the unconscious can be reached not just through language, but also through the body itself. The self and the individuation process would remain at the heart of my psychological model. In a world marked by shifting and fragmented identities, the quest for inner wholeness is more essential than ever. I would, however, enrich these ideas by incorporating contemporary understandings of identity as fluid and often uncertain. Lastly, I would turn greater attention to the environment and our psychological bond with nature. The climate crisis and biodiversity loss reflect a profound disconnection, not only from the Earth but from our own inner nature. I might even introduce a new concept, the biospheric unconscious, to describe our innate, often forgotten, connection with all living things.
If I were living in today's world, I would retain the core of my teachings, the Four Noble Truths, the Eightfold Path, anatta, non-self, and the principle of interdependence, but I would adapt their language and framing to better resonate with modern understanding and needs. One significant shift would be integrating my teachings with findings from cognitive science and neuroscience. Current research on meditation and mindfulness reveals their profound impact on brain structure and function. I would use such findings to reinforce the empirical basis of the path I advocate. Unlike Jung, my focus would be less on the unconscious and more on metacognitive awareness, the capacity to observe one's own mental processes. This approach aligns closely with third-wave psychotherapies, such as mindfulness-based therapy and acceptance and commitment therapy. In today's digital age, teachings like right attention have taken on renewed significance. Modern individuals are constantly bombarded by distractions. I would likely introduce specific guidance for managing attention in this era, and treat digital addiction as a new manifestation of attachment. I would also broaden the scope of my teachings on nonviolence and universal compassion to meet today's global challenges. In a time marked by hate speech, political division, and environmental crisis, universal compassion is no longer merely an ideal. It is essential to human survival. One major shift would be a greater emphasis on the practical application of these teachings in everyday life, not only for monks and ascetics, but for all. The essence of my teachings, non-self and interdependence, can offer solutions to global issues, from economic disparity to climate change. I would set aside hierarchical systems and certain traditional elements that have been appended to my teachings over the centuries. I would also introduce a more egalitarian view regarding gender. And finally, I would ground my teachings in scientific evidence, eschewing reliance on supernatural elements. This reflects my original method, which emphasized direct experience and empirical insight over blind belief. Though the world now faces unprecedented challenges, I still believe that liberation from suffering lies in deeply understanding the true nature of reality and cultivating a mind that is clear, compassionate, and free from attachments.
That brings us to the end of this profound debate. We hope this exchange offered you insight and sparked deeper reflection. If you found value in this dialogue, don't forget to subscribe to Clarified Mind. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next episode.